He's on the line all across the women's bracket. We'll get you some of the biggest outcomes we expect coming up. Plus, how did they get to a deal and what does it mean? Annie Costabile will break it all down for the WNBA. And now that we know that one huge domino has fallen, what's it mean for the rest of the East? We'll break it down. It's almost time for
Yahoo Sports Daily!
She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we're rack stacked and packed as we get you caught up on everything you need to know. And the chaos has begun, Caroline. I know we got a lot more we're going to get into, but it's time to take some victory laps on this show because you have called some upsets. I have called some themes. And day one of the NCAA tournament made one thing very clear. For every person running around telling you Cinderella's are dead, and for everybody person telling you college basketball is suffering, for all the naysayers, yesterday was a big old slap in the face to remind you that there still is nothing better than March Madness because mid-majors were just out there marching everywhere.
I mean, I would just like to say, and if I could take my victory lap, yesterday I called it VCU over North Carolina. Cha-ching. Thank you very much. More on that in a moment. Yesterday, I did call SLU over Georgia, and SLU didn't just beat Georgia. SLU absolutely bent him over and spanked him. Cha-ching. Thank you very much. Thank you. But we also had a high point over Wisconsin. We also nearly had what would have been, I think, the greatest upset in the history of the NCAA tournament. Had Siena done the impossible, had Siena been able to capitalize on their double-digit lead at halftime against Duke, and the 16 took down a 1 for only the third time in NCAA tournament history, and doing it with only five guys that played the entirety of the 40 minutes, taking down the big bad Duke Blue Devils. Now, that would have been epic, but Fitz, I think just the fact that they played them close, just the fact that every Duke fan across America was getting nervous is just a reminder that even though the final score did not go their way, March Madness is weird and funky things happen, and yesterday delivered.
100%. We've spent so much time talking about the big money and the big brands and the haves and the have-nots, and that's why I think it's so substantial. You know, when you talk about High Point pulling off the win, it's not just that High Point pulled off the win. It's that the coach went to the podium afterwards and reminded everybody that mid-majors at that point were 2-0, right? Because everybody had so many questions, and he's sitting there saying, nobody will schedule us, and look at what we just did to one of the best teams in the country in Wisconsin. We took them down. Now, I think this is just part of why I continue to say, look, if you watched a lot of college ball this year, I don't think most teams have really separated themselves. I think that we've seen, that's why I keep talking about the variance, the good and the bad we've seen. We saw all of the bad from Wisconsin in a game against a team in High Point that can spread the ball around, turn the ball around, and they shoot in huge numbers. So they're going to rely on bulk to be the thing that gets them the win, and they do exactly that. It was such a statement. They said, we ain't played nobody. We played somebody now. I love that. I love that mindset because I think that's what was being proven over and over and over again yesterday. So to me, you know, it's funny because the story isn't today the highest paid player, according to multiple reports in NIL, was A.J. DePonce. Well, he's going to watch the rest of the tournament from home, right? The story was supposed to be Big Ten basketball, and we watched Big Ten teams fall left and right? The story was supposed to be big brands would come in and dominate, and the first day would be less interesting. And to your point, Duke came out and showed us that they may not even have the right mindset to win a championship. So I look across yesterday, and I think if there was anything that we were really reminded of, it's that this era is just riveting. Like, you can't just bank a game and say it's done. To see North Carolina fall, and let's go there, and what is tied for the biggest comeback in NCAA first-round tournament history. They fall in this game. Like, it's just stunning moment after stunning moment from big brands that weren't ready to be punched in the mouth over and over and over again. VCU takes down North Carolina, and we were texting each other last night. This is so stunning, not just because VCU won, not just because North Carolina lost, but the way it went down. VCU had every opportunity to fold in this game, and they didn't. They did the opposite. They kept punching and punching and punching, and they find their way to a win.
It was the manner in which North Carolina lost. And this was, what, a 2.5 point spread? This was the game that everyone was picking to be one of the big upsets of the day. I was reading an ESPN article and it said, the most likely upsets, and the one with the highest probability was this one. So it's not like it came out of totally and completely out of nowhere. It wasn't a Siena potentially beating Duke kind of epic upset. Everyone expected this to be a ball game. And if it was a ball game, if it was back and forth and lead changes and a grind all the way to the end of it, and North Carolina just didn't have the ball last, and they lost in an absolute battle. Yes, it still stinks. Yes, you're still falling way short of program expectation, but maybe it feels a little bit different knowing that it was such a battle. But I think it stings even more. It is salt even more in this wound, considering North Carolina had a 19-point lead in the second half. A 19-point lead. And they tucked their tails between their legs and they let VCU win it. Felt like North Carolina at a certain point just said, okay, we just can't lose this game. But you can't have that mentality in the NCAA tournament, especially when you're playing a really good VCU team, because they got so tight. They missed free throws. They made mistakes. They turned the ball over. They played Swiss cheese defense. I mean, Virginia Commonwealth was getting wide open shots all night long in the second half. And I'm looking around like, hello, does anybody realize that this score is close? Does anybody realize that there's plenty of ball game left? So while I think the number one story waking up today on the first day of the tournament is Cinderellas are not dead, we had a great, awesome day of action, I think the second biggest story is and should be Hubert Davis's job security. Because that is so embarrassing. That was an embarrassing loss. We're talking about North Carolina. Last night in that game, those players were pumping their chests. They were pointing at their jerseys, talking about the brand. We're North Carolina. We're the Tar Heels. We're not just one of the greatest brands in this sport, one of the greatest brands in sports, period. And you just lost. You just blew a 19-point lead and you're going home after the round of 64. That's not the North Carolina standard. And I understand that Hubert Davis brought this team to the national championship game not that long ago. I understand that. That was Roy Williams' team. That wasn't Hubert Davis's team. And since then, they missed the tournament altogether. They lost in the Sweet 16. They lost in the first round and then followed that up again with a loss in the first round. This is not the North Carolina standard. And I keep hearing, hey, like North Carolina should fire Hubert Davis, but they're not gonna. Why? What's the hesitation? I know he's a Roy Williams guy. I hear you. I understand it. The Lady Vols went through this as well. They kept hiring former players and former coaches that coached and played under Pat Summitt. But it got to a certain point that you hire those coaches to get Pat Summitt results, but you're not getting them. So at some point, you just have to go outside of what's familiar. You hired Hubert Davis to get Roy Williams results, and that is not what you are getting. I feel like the Hubert Davis experiment has run its course.
I don't think you can excuse the decisions in the second half to shorten the bench. I don't think you can excuse the mentality down the stretch. I mean, I keep going back to the go-ahead shot that turned into the game-winning shot for VCU. Nice step-back three, just dagger. And even on the broadcast, they mentioned, like, not even a smile. It's a step-back three, boom, all of a sudden everything's great. Well, remember, North Carolina had a chance to get to the line to make this thing work for them, and then instead they missed the first free throw, and then on the second free throw where they're needing to intentionally miss it so they can try and get a putback, they don't hit the rim, which is a violation and turns the ball over. So even in those moments, like that's a player error, but that's also coaching. How many times have they run that? How many times, like, how are you not ready for that moment? We all knew the intentional miss was coming, and we just saw it work perfectly, for the Lakers just a few days ago, right? Like, we all know that the intentional miss is coming, but the inability to execute it, partly on the player, but partly on how many reps did we get for this? How much preparation was there for it? Because North Carolina in the second half wilted. And when you have that sort of a wilting, you have to ask the question, why? And if we don't have a clear answer on why or how to fix it, it didn't feel like at the podium afterwards Hubert had any clear answers. Then my immediate question goes to, are you the right guy? If you can't identify a problem, then you can't fix the problem. So now all of a sudden, if I'm looking at the podium and I'm saying, well, there's definitely a problem you haven't told me how you're going to fix, and a problem that you haven't really identified, then are you the right man in the room? I think that's all fair. There was a mentality issue with North Carolina, just like to go to Duke. There was a mentality issue for Duke. I thought it was aggravating to have players from Duke going into the half saying, we thought this was going to be a cakewalk. Obviously, it isn't. We're going to have to play Duke basketball. What the hell are you doing going into a first-round game of the NCAA tournament pretending that it's going to be a cakewalk? Like, how do we get to the point where all of a sudden, if you're Duke, you're walking in and saying, oh, yeah, we thought we were just going to be able to moonwalk all over this thing and it was going to be fine. I have an issue with championship teams, with championship talent, not showing championship mentality. I don't care if we're talking about first round. I don't care if we're talking about 1v16. I don't care what we're talking about. Championship teams should be able, Caroline, to come in with championship mentality. I am concerned North Carolina didn't have it. I'm also concerned moving forward that Duke clearly didn't have it, even if they escape with a win.
I think one of the other things that's concerning about me about Hubert Davis is what I just laid out about how VCU was the sexy upset pick. Not everyone, but a lot of people were picking VCU to beat North Carolina. Very slim spread. Everywhere we were talking about VCU upsetting North Carolina. If you as a head coach can't use that as bulletin board material to get your team fired up and ready to play pissed off, then what are we doing? Like, that's your job as a head coach. That's your job to show everybody nobody believes in you. Who cares about the name that's across your chest? Who cares about what the colors that you're wearing? People don't believe in you. Are you going to prove them wrong? And they didn't. One thing about Duke, I will say, I think it's a good sign that they were able to flip the switch and they could turn it on. That they acknowledged, oh, wait, this is a way bigger dogfight than we ever imagined that it would be. So let's, actually start locking in and playing some basketball. And they did, and it was effective. And so I think that's a positive thing. But the other side of Duke is their defense looked horrific. The shots weren't falling. They struggled to create offense. And shout out to Siena. Those are some absolute dogs. Those were some warriors out there yesterday. But Duke's going to see some much tougher defenses. And Duke is going to have to defend some much more difficult offenses throughout the course of the NCAA tournament if they want to win a championship, which is, I know, and we all know, the standard at Duke. I am concerned about Duke. Maybe not their mentality as much because we saw them lock in yesterday, but I'm just concerned about Duke as a whole.
I think Duke might be vastly overrating themselves if they thought they could go in and just to get through this game. And by the way, Siena, for anyone that didn't watch the game, Siena played their starting five for all but basically 45 seconds of this game. Siena looked at it, the Siena's coaching staff looked at their best five, and they looked at Duke's best five, and they said, hey, we can do this. We can do this, which is incredible. Obviously, they went cold in the second half. Their legs looked shot in the second half. They didn't have the depth to handle it in the second half. That's all part of the reality of it. But it brings me to a mid-major concept, Caroline, because, again, mid-major coaches were using this moment to puff their chest yesterday. I can't decide if yesterday was best case or worst case for mid-majors. Hear me out. Because the messaging after the games was schedule us. If you scheduled us on neutral floors, if you scheduled us somewhere that was advantageous for everybody, we would have these quad one wins. As we were reminded by one coach yesterday, there's now two of us that have quad one wins. So I understand that. I don't know. Yesterday was a statement to me that mid-majors can compete. I don't think yesterday was a statement that is going to get more teams to schedule mid-majors, because now all of a sudden it's a reminder to all those quad one teams. Nah, we're good. We'd rather not face you at all until we get to the tournament. Weirdly, the success in this tournament for mid-majors, which I think is absolutely necessary for the sport, does not make it easier for mid-majors to schedule next year. The Belmonts of the world, the High Points of the world, the Miami of Ohio's of the world, it got a little bit tougher because they just reminded everybody that they can't beat anybody.
And I think that's a great point by you, which is what I think makes the psychology of March Madness so fascinating. If Duke and Siena played in November, what do you think the final score would be? 114-12? Somewhere around there? And Duke probably wouldn't even break much of a sweat doing it. Like, if these teams played in the regular season, and I'm talking about the big dogs, the blue bloods, taking on the teams that we don't really know where they are, or we at least had to Google where they were. I did have to Google where Siena was. If they played in the regular season, these games likely aren't tight. They're likely not close. They're likely not making all of these fans at home feel some type of way about it. So why are things different in March? Why, when you get on an NCAA tournament court, why all of a sudden are you seeing these epic upsets that there's a really, really, really low likelihood that it would even be close in the regular season? So I totally hear you, because you don't want to schedule these premier mid majors because you don't get much out of beating them in the regular season, and it's a huge, kind of red dot on your resume if you lose to them in the regular season. But the regular season mentality is wildly different than what we see in the postseason. I don't know why that is. That's what makes March so special. That's why we love March, but it is different.
King McClure said on Sunday night on our bracket show, you're either made for the moment or you're not. And we were reminded right away, there's a bunch of mid-major kids that have been looking forward to this all year long that are made for the moment. All right, from the men's tournament to the women's, action gets underway today in the women's tournament. We'll give you some legacies that are about to be impacted in the action we're going to see coming up next.
Well, one of the things, too, that keeps coming up, I keep hearing, and it kept coming up in response to my story after the hearing and during the hearing, is, hey, why doesn't he just go pro? Imagine being a college kid and making $5 million plus.
It's pretty easy. It's just money, guys. It's guaranteed money. This is probably, for most of these individuals, the last time they can make this much money playing the sport.
How can I sit here in one breath and say the sport is broken when it looks like the audience is more pleased with the sport than ever?
It's not broke. It's just we've been drinking out of a fire hose for 3 years. But it can't just be pay them, kick them off the team, next guy, next team. I worry about these kids' long-term health and what they're going to do with their lives when they're 26 and 27, when they have no roots at any university.
James Rodriguez is reportedly joining Minnesota United. The main thing, as a fan of the league, I would just be excited to see him play. And then Minnesota against NYCFC, get to go see James. And what if that game is at Citi Field, bro? Queens is going to lose their mind.
It's going to go nuts. Astoria and Jackson Heights will be empty. There will be 3 Uruguayans, 4 Argentinians, and 6 Mexicans in all of Jackson Heights. Going, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody?
Admittedly, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter as a prospect. Do you have any sense of what his growth is going to be like, where he might be playing more and more, what his role is going to look like, especially on the offensive side?
The way he is, his personality, I think this injury in rookie year is only going to just make him better. He was starting to really get going on offense, and we were starting to click. So who knows what the rep count looks like, but I know he's a special receiver when he gets the ball in his hands.
Who will reign as queens of the court? The NCAA women's basketball tournament begins today. All the action getting set, and we're here to break it down for you. There's a ton on the line, obviously, in these tournaments, and I think we've been pretty clear. We expect a lot of chalk, Caroline, in the women's tournament, but a lot of chalk doesn't mean there's not a lot at stake. So let's take a look at some legacies that could be impacted one way or the other by their performances and by the team performances throughout the course of this tournament. And let's start with players, because we fall in love with, there's so many players to fall in love with. Who stands out to you as somebody that you think can actually have legacy movement based on what happens in this tournament?
I think Olivia Miles at TCU. She transferred from Notre Dame last season, and her and Hannah Hidalgo were like this incredible 1-2 punch that made Notre Dame a really difficult team to play. And then when Olivia Miles decided to enter the transfer portal, there was some discussion, there was some thought about like what happened there, what was going on between Olivia Miles and the rest of the team, what prompted that move. She transfers to TCU and she has just absolutely blossomed. She has been kind of the star and the number one focal point of that team. We saw that last season as well. Haley Van Lith had this kind of career renaissance after transferring to TCU. We knew Haley Van Lith. She made a name for herself at Louisville. She transferred to LSU. It wasn't a good system for her. She really just kind of got swallowed up. She kind of just fell by the wayside. We didn't really think about Haley Van Lith very often. Her numbers that plummeted. She transfers to TCU, and she was a big reason. She was a key cog for that TCU team making a run into the tournament. We're seeing that same kind of, not that I'm not going to say that Olivia Miles needed a renaissance or is having a renaissance, because she had a really great year at Notre Dame last year, but we're almost seeing Olivia Miles kind of transform into the number one focal point of her team. If Olivia Miles is able to lead TCU on a run, especially if TCU goes on a run further than Notre Dame, if Olivia Miles becomes more of a story for her team than Hannah Hidalgo is for Notre Dame, then I think that's kind of she feels vindicated and maybe validated in her decision. And I think we start to talk about Olivia Miles as the TCU Horned Frog rather than Olivia Miles, the player that we saw transfer from Notre Dame. So we're starting to see her kind of carve out her own legacy for herself. And that will definitely get cemented if she can go on a run in this tournament.
I actually love that comp by you, especially because of what we have seen in the last few years in the tournament. So I'll go with somebody you've talked a lot about on this show, and it really had me thinking about Flau'jae. Look, anytime you can just be one name instead of Flau'jae Johnson, anytime you can just be one name, you are cemented as a superstar. I want to be clear.
Yeah.
There's no cementing left in a legacy for Flau'jae to be a superstar. She is that. But at this point, she's every bit the superstar for the personality and for who she is off the court, along with her greatness. When we think of Flau'jae, I don't think the first thing right now we think is greatness on the court. We just think greatness overall, right? And there's this moment for me where LSU has the opportunity in this particular tournament where eyes are sort of on them, but not on them the way that they have been in other years. It feels like there's not the same level of, oh my God, stop everything, LSU is coming. I think there's a real opportunity here, Caroline, for everybody to be reminded of what got Flau'jae to be Flau'jae, right? Like, let's remember that to become the star, you had to be a star on the court. And again, she's had a very good year. It's been good. But there's a moment for me of going in and sort of feeling like world beater, especially the way that we have cemented these number one seeds. I think if LSU can come out and go on a long tourney run, the only way they're going to do that is if Flau'jae is an absolute superstar on the court, which is what I want for her, because I want to be reminded that she is a celebrity because she's a great basketball player. And not just a great basketball player, but one of the best in the nation right now. I think she has the opportunity to do that, which, by the way, going into the WNBA draft that is now going to be absolute madness just around the corner, right? It feels like a big tourney run for Flau'jae would also help cement just where she sits in the minds of the W. I think there's a lot of legacy on the line there.
I love this pick by you because it's 100% true. And I will say, just speaking from the LSU perspective, like Flau'jae's legacy is cemented within the LSU community because she won a national championship, the first ever national championship for men's or women's basketball at LSU. Because of Flau'jae thank you. Flau'jae is a superstar in what she does in music. You know, Flau'jae is a superstar because of what she does in giving back to the community. Flau'jae does a lot of community and charity work. So in that, you know, she's big four. Like that, you say the number 4 and everybody in Baton Rouge knows exactly who you're talking about. It's cementing her legacy within women's basketball and within the college game. And I've seen Flau'jae, you know, have great games, but kind of falter whenever she's in her biggest moments. I mean, LSU has not beaten South Carolina in over a decade. Kim Mulkey has never beaten Dawn Staley at LSU. They had a great opportunity to do that in their last matchup with South Carolina in the regular season. It was a close game. It was a back and forth game. Flau'jae needed to hit a free throw, and she didn't. She missed it. She went 2 for 6 from the line in that game. So it's like, look, Flau'jae, you're going to have to do those small things right because it's doing all of the little tiny things that build up to taking down the likes of a South Carolina or a UCLA, which LSU is going to have to do in order to get to the Final Four and win a national championship. We talked about this on Hoops 360 as well. Flau'jae won a national championship when she was a freshman. And we all of us LSU fans were like, oh, Flau'jae is coming back. Like, oh, let's get ready. This, you know, young freshman dynamo. And she's remained a dynamo. And it hasn't come in the fruition of national championships. But that first national championship felt like it was kind of Angel Reese's. She was the more senior player. She was another star player on that team. If LSU wins a national championship this year, she will have ownership of that championship. It will be like Flau'jae got one as a freshman, and now Flau'jae got one as the certified leader of this team. So I'm with you 100%. I think that a lot is on the line for Flau'jae's WNBA draft stock and also for her legacy in women's basketball. But Fitzy, we've got some coach legacies on the line as well. Who do you think, which coach could cement their legacy this postseason?
So it's funny because we say legacy, and I'm going to go all the way back to just job status. A program that I know well from spending 20 years in Tennessee, Kim Caldwell needs a run. I mean, she needs a run. And I know it's early in her time as the head coach for the Lady Vols. I get it. I understand that it is early to be panicked. But I also understand, having lived in that era, I moved to Nashville in 1996, right? And when I moved to Nashville in 1996, Pat Summitt was a way of life in the entire state of Tennessee. So to see the Lady Vols sort of be where they are, which is good, not great, fine, not amazing. And then at the same time, see what UConn continues to do year in and year out, absolutely drives the entire state of Tennessee insane. So I think Kim Caldwell, while she has no skin in the game yet for a legacy, she just needs a run to be able to cement, sort of get everybody off her back and get some time with the program. Who do you think can actually improve their legacy?
Yeah, but to your point, in the state of Tennessee, we just saw a photo of Shea Ralph there, the head coach at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a top 5 team in the country. Vanderbilt is a 2 seed. Like, Vanderbilt is one of the best teams in the country. Michaela Blakes is one of the best players in the country. So let's not act like Tennessee's not feeling that. Your rival in state, this is your sport. Women's basketball is your sport. The Women's Basketball Hall of Fame is in Knoxville, for crying out loud. And Vanderbilt's beating you at your own game. So 100%, I think they're feeling the pressure there. The vibes are bad going into the NCAA tournament. But I think the coach that has the most on the line for their legacy is UCLA head coach Cori Close. Cori Close is a wonderful human being and a great basketball coach as well. Cassandra Negley and I had an opportunity to catch up with Cori Close. She gave us like 30 minutes of her time on air and off air. Like, she was so incredibly kind. UCLA has never won a national championship in women's basketball. Cori Close has never won a national championship. Cori Close now has this number 2 team in the country, and there was a very strong argument for UCLA to be the number 1 overall seed. Cori Close has one of the best players on the planet on her team in Lauren Betts. Kiki Rice, Gabby Hawkes, those supplemental players as well. They're so important to what this system wants to do. They're all seniors. This feels like the opportunity in the window that if UCLA doesn't win now, then when? You have a veteran team that's constructed to win a national championship right now. This is Cori Close's opportunity to win her first and to bring UCLA its first.
I think this is one of those moments where it's just, I say this as somebody, as I always tell everybody, I live 20 minutes from UConn's campus. It would be great for women's college basketball to see UConn go out and win a national championship. I'll say that. Don't tell any of my friends here that I said that. They're going to get me in trouble. All right, so coming up next, we'll get back to the men's tournament, get a breakdown from one of the best in the business, Dan Wolken. We'll get all of Dan's thoughts from the chaos that has already begun in March, coming up next.
What do you think was kind of misunderstood about George Pickens prior to him arriving in Dallas?
I don't know. It was so many things that I feel like that was misunderstood. They feel like his attitude was off. And I mean, he come in the league at 19 years old. What do you expect out of a guy and you want him to be your receiver 1?
Right.
I feel like that's kind of crazy. But keeping him within the guidelines, letting him be himself at the same time, I feel like was probably the best thing for him. And I knew that it was gonna have him comfortable here in Dallas.
You don't want to get ahead of yourself when you think that he's going to come and be a game changer. He's more of a managerial type that can operate at a high level. I've made the comparison to Jared Goff in terms of how he'll play the game within the right system. The best thing that has happened to Fernando Mendoza is Clint Kubiak bringing his system to the Las Vegas Raiders. And when surrounded by the right talent, he can have a lot of success.
We got the announcement that Floyd Mayweather will be taking on Manny Pacquiao in a rematch. People will watch, people will tune in, and I'm curious to see how it looks. Like, I think they're going to be around the same skill level if they both come in healthy, and I really think it is significant that Floyd Mayweather is putting the L on the line.
100%. How do you make the competitive balance the most even? I think Manny and Floyd at this stages in their life, that makes it fair and exciting. So I'm in on Mayweather Pacquiao too.
Little Saban for us because everybody loves Saban. So, give us your thoughts.
I knew that you were going to bring me in here and have me do Nick Saban for you.
Have you done Saban for Saban?
No, but I met him.
Okay.
And he didn't know that it was me. And he shook my hand, and I said, Coach, Joey Molinaro, so good to finally meet you, as if he would know who I was. And he just looked at me and goes, yeah, well, all right. Walked away.
North Carolina can either keep Hubert Davis or it can get serious about its basketball program, but it cannot do both. That from Dan Wolken. Strong words. Dan joins us now after what we saw yesterday. Dan, what is the path? How do they fix what's going on in North Carolina? Because certainly it's a shocking way to see them lose a basketball game.
Yeah, this isn't really a one-game thing either. Certainly some of the issues last night that came into play as North Carolina blew that big lead to VCU have been consistent. End-of-game situations, out-of-bounds plays, things like that. But I look at the big picture, which is Hubert Davis as an 8 seed in his first year. It was a disappointing year. Got to the national championship game. They got hot. And he was the toast of the town. But 4 years have now passed, and he has not won an NCAA, or he's won. He got to a Sweet 16 as a 1 seed 2 years ago. They lost to Alabama. The last 2 seasons, first round exits. And I just think overall you look at it and say, is this good enough for North Carolina? This is one of the top 3 or 4 jobs in the sport. And if you just take away that first year run to the finals, it's not a very good postseason resume. It's not a great ACC regular season resume. He won 1 regular season conference title. That's it. This is North Carolina we're talking about. And I think now there's just enough body of evidence for the people in charge there to pull the plug on this thing and start over. We'll see if they actually do it.
I'm with you 1,000%, Dan. And I do want to get into some of the games that we'll have today and going into the next round. But before we do that, aside from Hubert Davis in North Carolina, which was a failure in getting bounced in the round of 64, what was the other big-time storyline that stuck out to you yesterday?
Well, I thought for the mid-majors, for the double-digit seeds, that everyone was kind of writing off because last year there were not very many upsets in the first round of the NCAA tournament. There's all the talk about NIL disparity and how the gap has just gotten so much bigger between the haves and have-nots in college basketball. I thought you saw yesterday a little bit of a pushback on that. Obviously, VCU beating North Carolina, High Point beating Wisconsin. There were some other mid-majors that I thought played really well and were very much in the game. Duke almost goes down against Siena yesterday. So I never really bought into that because I just think the history of the tournament has shown that it's a little bit random and teams who are favored get tight at the end of games. It's a big stage. It's a neutral court. It's just different than what teams experience during the regular season. And that's what leads to so many upsets. And I think yesterday, the big storyline for me is that maybe some of that speculation that it's all over for the upsets, for the Cinderellas, I think maybe that's calmed down a bit.
Oh, I love it. I'm so excited. And we have another David today, but we're going to go even farther into the future, Dan. All right, what we're going to do now that we know some teams that have made it out of the first round is we're going to play one of our favorite games. You know it well. This is where we like to go in and play Can't Wait. So we'll give you a game, and then we'll decide. If it's a game you are super excited for, you think it's going to be epic and all-timer, oh, my God, then you tell everybody it's a Bart because Bart Scott will tell us then, Can't Wait. All right. And what the opposite of a Bart is, of course, if anybody's new in these streets, the opposite of a Bart is clearly a fart, in which case you'll hear this sound. To remind everybody, you don't really love that game. So let's take a look at some of the action that is coming in and decide if it's a Bart or a fart. And we'll start with High Point, who just did what High Point did. They're talking their talk. They're swaggy walking in. All right. So High Point versus Arkansas. What do you think, a Bart or a fart?
I think it's a fart, unfortunately. I just think Arkansas is way too talented, way too much ability to score the ball. High Point obviously played really well against Wisconsin, but I think this is too big of a hill for them to climb.
Never count out Tournament Cal, though. We've seen it before. We'll probably see it again at some point. But let's look at 2 teams that had wildly different day ones of the tournament. TCU with a fun back-and-forth game against Ohio State that came down to the wire. Against Duke, who was down by double digits to Siena. Bart or fart, Duke TCU?
I'm going to go Bart here.
Can't wait.
The reason is because of Jamie Dixon. Jamie Dixon, if you look over the totality of his career, he gets teams to play a certain way, physical. It's not always pretty, but it's effective, and it's tough on the opposition. And Duke, they're one of those classic, highly skilled teams. And yeah, I mean, they've got toughness with Cam Boozer and that kind of thing, but they are young and they're not maybe the most rugged team in the field. And I do think Jamie Dixon's going to muck it up on them. I remember a couple years ago, they took Arizona to the wire in the second round, 1-8 game, and really should have won. And I'm not going to be surprised if this thing comes down to the last minute or two.
How concerned are you about Duke given what we saw in the first round? Aberration or wake-up call?
Well, probably a little bit of both. The first half, they just didn't defend. They just didn't guard, and that's kind of been their calling card. You know, maybe they were overconfident. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe there were some nerves at play. But I thought in the second half, they got their energy going. They got their legs back a little bit, and they were able to take control of the game, but still it was not easy for them. So, yeah, a little bit of concern. And again, that's why I said, like, I don't think right now the way they're playing, they're just going to blow out really good teams. TCU played in the toughest conference, the deepest conference, the Big 12. They've been through all these wars against the Houstons and the Arizonas. So TCU is going to know how to play against a team like Duke.
All right. So
Yeah,
what about
no
Nebraska
doubt.
versus? Oh, sorry, Caroline. We'll keep going to Nebraska versus Vandy here. Bart or a fart on Nebraska finally getting off the schneid versus Vandy.
Bart.
Can't wait.
This is a great matchup, especially in a 4-5 game. A lot of people thought Vandy was underseeded. I'm in that camp. I thought they were probably a 3-seed quality team. Nebraska getting their first tournament win looked very good, handled Troy easily. This is going to be a very different stylistic matchup to what Vanderbilt faced yesterday. They were down early in that game in the first half to McNeese. McNeese, very athletic, pressing, just kind of all over you physically kind of team. And I thought that was a little bit of an uncomfortable matchup for Vandy. This is going to be a totally different type of game. Nebraska's not nearly that athletic, but they certainly shoot the ball extremely well and execute on the offensive end. So Vandy's going to have their work cut out for them. I don't know what the line is in this game. I would not be surprised if Vanderbilt's a slight favorite, and they probably should be if you look at the metrics. But also you have to consider, there you go. So Nebraska is going to have a home court advantage. They brought a ton of people down from Oklahoma City, or from Nebraska to Oklahoma City yesterday, and it felt like a home game. So that's something else to look forward to see how Vandy responds in that kind of like a road environment.
If there is one thing I know about Nebraska fans, they're going to travel and they're going to be there in droves and they are going to be loud. I don't know if I can say the same thing about Vanderbilt fans, but Nebraska fans, absolutely, they travel well. Let's look at two teams, two blue blood programs, Louisville and Michigan State. Bart or fart?
I'm going to say fart. Look, it might be a decent game. I think Louisville without Mikael Brown is probably drawing dead here. You know, maybe he can come back. They've been vague about his injury status. But, you know, a lot of people picked them to lose in the first round to South Florida, and they got that big lead, almost kind of gave it back. They didn't handle the pressure, full court pressure very well. I don't think Michigan State is a great team either, but I do think they're going to win this one pretty routinely, and I would be surprised if this is one of the better games of the weekend.
Yeah, I continue to say I've seen long stretches where Sparty just can't hit the broadside of a barn. So I get a little worried about Michigan State in any game, but they shot well in the first round, surprising as that was. What about VCU, Illinois? Bart or fart for you?
You know, I'm going to go Bart.
Can't wait.
You know, the thing about Illinois, they may be the most underrated team in the tournament in some way. Like, nobody really talks about Illinois, but I wouldn't be shocked if you looked up and they're in the Final Four. I think they have that kind of talent. And you're looking at Andrej Stojakovic there, one of the many sort of Serbian Balkan, even though he's an American kid, obviously son of Peja Stojakovic, the Balkan connection has really fueled Illinois with a lot of talent. And, so they play that sort of European style of basketball. And I think they're very, very good. But, as we saw with VCU, they have great guard play. And it's sort of the classic VCU tournament team that we've seen before make deep runs in March. So, I'm into this matchup.
If you just go through the Illinois roster, that's one that you really have to rely on the pronunciation guide. Got a lot of consonants in that roster. Let's look at another game. Michigan and St. Louis. Does Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Steph Blurry, Milk Chamberlain, whatever nickname you want to use for Robbie Avila, does St. Louis have what it takes to take down Michigan? Bart or fart?
So I'm going to go Bart here again.
Can't wait.
And the reason is because I've actually picked St. Louis to win this game in my official bracket that I've got up at Yahoo Fantasy. I think St. Louis, they just absolutely smoked Georgia last night. I mean, that game was never competitive. That was a 30-point blowout. And honestly, I watched a lot of that Michigan game against Howard, and I thought they were a little shaky. And they have not played well down the stretch of the season. They've played okay. But this has not been their best basketball by any stretch of the imagination. And, Kaysen being injured hurts their team, even though he's not one of their best players. They just don't have as much depth as they had before. I really think St. Louis has a good chance here. Josh Schertz, a coaching superstar who is definitely going to be a guy that a lot of the Blue Bloods call in the coming years.
All right, so what about Texas versus Gonzaga? Bart or fart on that one?
Bart, yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah, the thing about Texas, it's funny, Sean Miller, his sort of, if you follow his press conferences throughout the year, he's been kind of a little bit down on his team. And you even saw yesterday, he was asked during the huddle interview with the sideline reporter how they could slow down AJ DeBanza for BYU, and he's like, well, we can't, so he's sort of in that like self-deprecating mode, which makes me think he actually might think his team has a chance to be dangerous in this tournament. And obviously now they've got 2 games under their belt. They played well last night, certainly much better than they did in the play-in game. And look, Gonzaga's Gonzaga, but it's not like they handled Kennesaw State with a lot of ease. I mean, that was a pretty competitive game, and talent-wise, Texas has players. So, yeah, this is certainly one I wouldn't be shocked if Texas pulls an upset.
Let's stay in the Lone Star State then. Texas A&M and Houston. Bart or fart?
Bart.
Can't wait.
I love Bucky McMillan and the way that Texas A&M plays basketball. They are not the most talented team that they're going to have there. They had to put this roster together way after the transfer portal had pretty much already been picked over because Bucky got the job there so late last year. So the idea that they're in the round of 32 is pretty incredible, given kind of where he started a year ago. But now here they are playing Houston. I mean, look, Houston's obviously the favorite, and they could win a national championship, and they're awesome. But you want to talk about like a contrast in styles and pace. A&M wants to play really, really fast, shoot a bunch of threes. They're going to pressure you full court, and then Houston is just a little bit different. They're an incredible defensive pressure team as well, but it's a little bit of a different twist on it, and they're going to be more deliberate, and they're going to play at their pace. So, if A&M can get them turned over a little bit, that thing could get spicy, but I'm just looking forward to seeing buckyball against the Cougars.
So, all right, with all the action we have Saturday, we still have action coming today. Is there a big upset you have out there today? Is there a team you'd like to pull something off?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing about these upsets, and everyone asks going into the tournament, who is going to be the upset team? And I always say, well, if we knew that, it wouldn't be an upset, right? Like the whole point of the upset is that you don't know exactly where it's going to come from. Let me give you just one game to keep an eye on. UConn versus Furman. 2:15. I know it's probably not going to happen, but obviously no one's talking about it because everyone loves UConn. I watched them play in the Big East tournament. I do not think they're coming into this thing with guns blazing. Like, this has not been a Danny Hurley type team that we remember from 2-3 years ago when they were dominating everybody. This is not that group. Furman, maybe they're not as good either, probably, as they were a couple years ago. But that's one of those, like, bedrock mid-major, so solid, well coached in everything they do. I really think that could be a good game.
I've got Hurley's first meltdown coming at the first TV timeout. What do you think? Over under first TV timeout for Hurley just losing his mind.
All it's going to take is a couple guys like, going under a screen when they shouldn't and get a three buried in their face, or, the ref makes a bad call. Yeah, he's going to be on edge early in this one.
Oh,
People
man.
breathe
It's
the wrong
amazing
way.
Oh my God! Yeah, somebody glanced at him in a way that he felt didn't respect his resume. Follow Dan on Twitter at Dan Wolken. That's the way you get to him there. Obviously, read him on Yahoo Sports. Dan, great job so far covering this. Thanks for your help. Thanks for your expertise. Thanks for hanging out with us.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
Great stuff
you,
from
Dan.
Dan. Coming up next, replacement refs. The nightmare might be true. I'll tell you about it.
A couple years ago, there was talk of John Jones and Francis Ngannou fighting, and John Jones said he wanted $10 million to fight Francis Ngannou, and Derek Lewis came out and said, $10 million, give me $1 million and I'll fight him.
They don't get it. They don't get it. And the managers think that they're doing a good job. The fighters think that they're doing a good job. And it's like, you guys are devaluing all of us. You guys are cutting out the legs from each other, crab in a barrel mentality. That's the mentality that has to change.
Is it time to remove conference affiliation and reward the top 16 teams?
100%. This is most a problem when the Western Conference is so much better as it has historically been. I like this. I would add another rule, which we've talked about before. I think the top seeds should be able to pick their opponent. That's the sort of thing that I think would juice up a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and I think would draw a lot more interest if that were to be the case.
Somehow, between the end of college football season, I don't know how this happens. Maybe it's just because there's so much NFL media. The NFL machine just sort of like elevates these guys who aren't like, who never really had that level of esteem or production in college. Like, we all made fun of the Trubisky thing. And then, like, no, by the way, no one in NFL media ever comes back and like, yeah, we duffed that one. Sorry. Yeah. No one ever says that. They just move on to the next guy.
What did you think about the Rams acquiring McDuffie and this price tag for him as well?
I laughed pretty hard when this came across. Like Les, like he couldn't help himself. He got to go back to who he is at all times. There was no way he was going to keep just drafting players in the first and trying to figure this out. Especially with the way Sean talked after that game, like the NFC title game. He's immediately kind of shady towards the Seahawks. He was obviously upset. Like, I would imagine this is about to be like a full-on assault offseason for the Rams to try and win another chip before Stafford gets out of there.
The NFL is eyeing potential replacement referees for 2026 as there is a possible CBA issue between the referees union and the league, which could lead to replacement refs. Now, we've seen this before. Caroline, if they did go on strike, we get backup referees. What are the ripple effects to you of that?
I'll leave the door open for the possibility that we could see a regression in the quality of refereeing. Of course, right? When you go to the backups, you're usually losing a certain level of quality. But even more than that, that's just a possibility. Even more than that, though, I think will be the illusion of a regression in quality of refereeing. Will be the illusion that these guys are backup refs. They don't know what they're doing. It's so easy for us and what we do, and for fans. We do it all the time, right? It's so easy to point to poor officiating as the reason why your team lost. And maybe that is the reason why, but it's usually not. It's usually not just one call that's the reason why your team lost the game. So I think that could be maybe the most detrimental thing, is the court of public opinion and the illusion that these backup referees are totally and completely, hurting their team's chances at winning games or getting a first down or whatever it might be.
So what's interesting here, because you're right, what's interesting to me here is that, to be clear, there are many officials that don't want to be full-time. This is where everybody says, well, we need to have full-time officials. Most officials do not want to be full-time because they have other jobs that they enjoy doing. They have lives that they've built and careers outside of this. So this is going to get contentious. The thing that really gets interesting to me is you're right. There will be the perception of a lower quality. There will be angry fans all over the place. There'll be probably some blown calls. And when there won't be any grace for that because they're replacement officials. The problem with all of that, though, is that there's no consequence to any of that. I guess I would ask how many people watching right now, if you turn on your favorite team this fall on a Sunday and you see a bunch of replacement officials, are you willing to turn off the TV and not watch the game? The answer is no. So realistically, whenever we get into these negotiations and you try and figure out where value is, if I'm the NFL, I don't really give a damn about what the referees want, and I will hold fast in all of these negotiations because at the end of the day, it's not really going to cost me anything. As bad as this could get, we could have replacement officials and everybody will spend weeks yelling about the terrible calls. But realistically, it'll bounce right back because we've seen it. We've seen Hail Marys. We've seen bad calls repeatedly. Officials aren't a reason that most fans tune out to the games. We see record numbers of ratings throughout the course of the NFL. When we saw replacement officials a few years ago, everybody yelled and screamed about it, but they didn't stop watching, and they still watch now. So if there's no long-term consequence to whatever people feel about it, well, then if I'm the NFL, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to and have to negotiate it the way that I need it, because I'm not going to have any consequence. The problem here, to me, is always going to be, even if they roll out replacement officials for the entire season, I'm not going to stop watching Raiders games. Most fans aren't going to stop watching football. So knowing that they'll still get the money, which means the advertisers will get the eyeballs, which means everybody will still make all of the cash that they need to make. We'll still see epic ratings. Most people screaming about it actually won't make a difference. So realistically, even if we get replacement officials, Caroline, I don't think, as much as I think it will hurt the quality of the product on the field, and I do believe it will, I also don't believe that there's any actual consequence to that. So who cares? Like it's such a flatline way to look at it. But if nobody's going to stop watching, then if I'm the NFL, I don't care what fans think about it.
Well, and if we didn't know that they were backup referees, do you think that we would really be stepping back and thinking, man, this officiating is significantly worse than what I'm accustomed to? Probably not. Probably not. And to your point, you're still going to watch Raider games. Saints fans probably feel like they have been burned by officiating more than any other fan base in the NFL. Looking at you, 2019 NFC Championship game, PI no call. And Saints fans still watch the NFL. So I do think that the NFL, more than any other league, really more than any other product out there on television, can say we can do whatever the hell we want because you're still going to watch it and our product is still king. Is that a scary and flawed way of thinking? Probably, but it's reality.
Yeah, well, and to that end, they might give us terrible quarterbacks this year. For anyone that hasn't seen some of this, some of the backup quarterbacks that are now finding their way into the league are absolutely awful. Awful. I just keep thinking about the number of games played by backup quarterbacks and realizing Andy Dalton was traded to the Eagles while nobody was paying attention. And now all of a sudden, Andy Dalton acquired for a 2027 7th-round pick means that there's a real world where we could see Andy Dalton late in the season filling in for Jalen Hurts. This is not the nightmare I want or need, Caroline.
Well, you say nobody was paying attention. It's because ain't nobody care. Ain't nobody care about where Andy Dalton is going or where Andy Dalton is playing. I mean, that's just where Andy Dalton is in his career right now. Andy Dalton is a career backup. He's the kind of guy that you bring in and you're like, yeah. And the game of, backup quarterback musical chairs, we'll take that one. Now, I will say, Andy Dalton might make the Eagles offense that we saw last season even more brutal to watch. And that is saying something. So I don't need to see very much of, if not any of, Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I'm anticipating that weird matchup one weekend where we're like Andy Dalton versus Carson Wentz, who has signed with the Vikings to be the third string, but maybe the backup, which means that there could be no more J.J. McCarthy. It certainly feels like Minnesota's prepared to get him out of the door. And again, these are just those funny moments where we look at it and say, how many quarterbacks played last year? The NFL is so strong right now that they're confident they can give you Andy Dalton versus Carson Wentz, and we will still watch. We are suckers for the drug of the
sickos.
NFL, Caroline, because Carson Wentz, the Vikings, It's inevitable. It just feels inevitable. Kyler Murray can't stay healthy. If there's no JJ, we're going to end up with Carson Wentz, quarterback of the Vikings.
We're twisted individuals. If you were to ask me, though, who are the 3 quarterbacks that you want to see the least in the 2026 season, I would probably say Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, and JJ McCarthy. And they all just happen to be in the same quarterback room. Isn't that crazy how that works? KOC came out and said, look, we want depth and we want maturity in the quarterback room. I guess that's what Carson Wentz gives you. Careful what you wish for, because you ask for depth and maturity. You end up with Carson Wentz.
And all of that, again, speaks to the fact that they're not comfortable with JJ. They don't even want JJ they don't want to walk into this season with even the possibility that JJ McCarthy could get stuck in a game as a backup. That's how bad it's gotten in Minnesota. And look, while we're talking about backup quarterbacks we don't want to see, there's one quarterback that might actually win the job that we could get stuck seeing this year. I would like to remind everybody that's already anointed Shedeur Sanders as the starter in Cleveland, that Deshaun Watson is sitting there too. Like, when we start talking about weird quarterbacks we're not thinking about that could be starting games this year, Deshaun Watson has a very real chance to go out and win this job. I mean, there's a very real path to Deshaun Watson being the week 1 starter for the Cleveland Browns. Like, everybody needs to just brace for it now. We might have to figure out how to have a new conversation about Deshaun.
The quarterback that I least want to see this season and beyond, forever and ever, amen, is the quarterback who's most likely to win the starting job. And that's Deshaun Watson. I won't feel like I am missing anything in my life if I never see that man's face or see him play football ever again. But I think that's just the reality of what's happening in Cleveland. Do you feel good about Dylan Gabriel? Do you feel good about Shedeur Sanders? Sure, you can feel optimistic and hopeful, but we don't know if either of those 2 are starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Should I say Pro Bowl quarterback, Shedeur Sanders? Thank you very much. And also, Todd Monken is coming into the building. So any kind of goodwill, any of these quarterbacks, or for his sake, bad will, that any of these quarterbacks built up with the last coaching staff, erase all of that. It is a totally and completely clean slate. Todd Monken's number 1 prerogative is to come into Cleveland and to win football games. There is a chance, dare I say a likelihood, that Todd Monken believes that that man gives the Cleveland Browns the best chance to win football games. So I don't like it at all, but that's the reality.
If I just take everything, the names off the back of the jerseys, and ask myself, which guy if we take everything we know about the drama, the personal issues for Deshaun, obviously, everything, all the accusations, all the lawsuits, everything. If we take all of it and just put it in a vacuum, and we ask ourselves, which of the 3 quarterbacks in Cleveland is the best quarterback just playing the position, I think that's going to end up being Deshaun. So I'm just sort of bracing myself now for this concept that Deshaun's going to come in and play. And what gets really interesting is what happens if he plays pretty well. Like, we've just presumed that the Browns are going to move on. I don't know what all of that looks like. I know that I can say this, and I've said it before. I'm glad I'm not a Browns fan, because this would be an incredibly difficult thing to even try and figure out how to root for. I've been ever since they acquired Deshaun, that's been my mindset. But now you've got a Deshaun that's come in that seems to have a bit of the yips and has been constantly injured. Can he get himself healthy? Can he stay on the field? If he can he beat out Shedeur? I think so. I think the best of Deshaun is better than the best of Shedeur. And I'm not even sure, frankly, that mid Deshaun isn't better than mid Shedeur. So we'll find out. But I think that Todd Monken owes it to the organization to try and go out and figure out what the best quarterback situation is. But that's difficult to do when we assign, we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live in a situation where I could just take the name off the back of the jersey. We live in a situation where Deshaun Watson could end up being the starting quarterback for Cleveland this year. And I'm not sure they have a path to a better answer. I don't think Shedeur's a better player. So it'll be really interesting to see if Todd Monken comes in and actually gives it to the best guy. What does it look like? Can Shedeur learn his offense and become the best of Shedeur? I hope so. Like, I would love for Shedeur to go out and truly be a Pro Bowl quarterback. I just think Deshaun has a much better chance of winning this gig than we're thinking about in this process. So I think this is the beginning, not the end of the conversation. What about backup quarterbacks we want to see? I'd love to see Mac Jones get another shot after seeing a little bit of good Mac.
I think Mac Jones is going to be a fascinating case study this season because this is the last year in which he's under contract in San Francisco. Mac Jones could be a really fascinating domino to fall in the quarterback carousel next year because if Mac Jones recreates what he did this past season, now I don't want to see Brock Purdy get hurt. You never wish that upon anyone. But if that does happen this season and we saw what Mac Jones was able to do last year, this year, well, then Mac Jones is going to get a starting job somewhere. Like Mac Jones is going to get legitimate starting quarterback money. So that could be a wild kind of hitch thrown into things as we lead up to roster construction for the 2027 season. Another one is Joe Flacco. I've just loved to see, the late career of Joe Flacco, the way that I feel like we keep wanting to count Joe Flacco out, and then he goes out there and has the kind of game that he had in that Steelers-Browns game this past season. So I know that Joe Flacco's getting up there in age. I do understand that, but Joe Flacco's just a fun quarterback to follow and to watch.
Credit to our amazing production staff finding Joe Flacco only because I was curious which jersey they'd put him in. He's played for so many teams at this point. Which jersey will we see Flacco when we got Bengals Flacco? I'm with you. I like anytime we can see old guys come in and just sort of hold it down for a week or two. I don't want the old guy to be my quarterback all year. I just want him to hold it down for a week or two. I'd love to see Anthony Richardson go somewhere and just shock the world. I don't know that that's going to happen, but in my mind, giving me the opportunity to see Anthony Richardson go somewhere where he can be a backup, and again, we're talking about backups here, where he can be a backup for a team like the Rams and maybe get a handful of great plays in goal line situations where they find creative ways to use him and he gets a chance to be a better version. Like Anthony Richardson, the athlete, who is far better than Anthony Richardson, the quarterback right now, I know that the Colts are going to give up on him, and rightfully so. He's done nothing to earn opportunities so far in this league, but to me it is pretty clear that I'd love to see what Anthony looks like in this league with the right coaches and the right things around him. All right, coming up, from NFL quarterbacks to NBA action, we have plenty to break down, including a huge night for Luka. We'll tell you about it next.
Well, one of the things, too, that keeps coming up, I keep hearing, and it kept coming up in response to my story after the hearing and during the hearing, is, hey, why doesn't he just go pro? Imagine being a college kid and making $5 million plus.
It's pretty easy. It's just money, guys. It's guaranteed money. This is probably, for most of these individuals, the last time they can make this much money playing the sport.
How can I sit here in one breath and say the sport is broken when it looks like the audience is more pleased with the sport than ever?
It's not broke. It's just we've been drinking out of a fire hose for 3 years. But it can't just be pay them, kick them off the team, next guy, next team. I worry about these kids' long-term health and what they're going to do with their lives when they're 26 and 27, when they have no roots at any university.
James Rodriguez is reportedly joining Minnesota United. The main thing as a fan of the league, I would just be excited to see him play. And then Minnesota against NYCFC, get to go see James. And what if that game is at Citi Field, bro? Queens is going to lose their mind.
It's going to go nuts. Astoria and Jackson Heights will be empty. There will be 3 Uruguayans, 4 Argentinians, and 6 Mexicans in all of Jackson Heights going, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody?
Admittedly, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter as a prospect. Do you have any sense of what his growth is going to be like, where he might be playing more and more, what his role is going to look like, especially on the offensive side?
The way he is, his personality, I think this injury in his rookie year is only going to just make him better. He was starting to really get going on offense, and we were starting to click. So who knows what the rep count looks like, but I know he's a special receiver when he gets the ball in his hands.
Oh, what a night for Luka. Good God. 60-point night, the most by a Lakers since Kobe's farewell game in 2016. I mean, LeBron adds a triple-double on a night that he ties Robert Parrish's record for games played. But we're going to go through the Lakers and several teams now with our very scientific vibe index. This is where we try and decide what the vibes are for different teams across the league. We are going to start with the Lakers. My God, what are the vibes to you right now in LA, Caroline?
I mean, how do you describe the best possible vibes that you could ever even think of and could ever possibly conceive? Like, the vibes are not even just at a 10 out of 10. The vibes are 11 out of 10. The vibes are sky high. The vibes are who can stop us? The vibes are, oh, you counted us out? I mean, when you're in an 8-game winning streak and Luka dropped 60 on a game after he dropped 40, whenever you have LeBron looking reminiscent of peak LeBron, even at 41 years old, when you have Austin Reeves doing Austin Reeves things, like everything that gave us confidence at the beginning of the season that the Lakers could be a championship team are all coming to fruition. No, it was easy and I think fair to pivot from that thought because the Lakers were losing games they weren't supposed to lose. They were only beating up on the bad teams. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. But now all of the pieces are fitting together. Now, I still don't view the Lakers as a legitimate championship contender out of the West. I'm going to have to change my mind at some point if they continue to put up gaudy numbers like this. But if you're a Laker fan, the vibes are absolutely sky high, and they should be.
Yeah, look, the vibes in LA are higher than I am at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. Look, this thing is absolutely wild.
Word.
It is incredible to watch. It is incredible to see. There's a joy to what they're doing right now, and Luka talked about it afterwards. Everybody's celebrating him, and that's what great teams do. They celebrate each other's success, and it was fun just to watch everybody sort of take the move, get out the way approach with Luka and the way he was running the offense last night. It was like, hey, Luka is he's hot. Let's let him be hot. Let's let him do the damn thing. It was electric to see, and Luka continues to remind us that he is Luka. Like, I don't want to oversimplify here, but even afterwards, I think J.J. Redick was the one that mentioned, lightly the MVP candidacy. I don't know whether Luka's an MVP, but I do know this. Luka's one of the best players in the NBA. We all know that. And while it hasn't looked right for much of the year, over the course of the last couple of weeks, it has. And yes, you're right. Like, we've been really, really slow to turn the yacht around and make it a supporting of the Lakers as being upper echelon. But, man, when you watch what they did last night over and over and over again, you just got to think, man, this is getting tougher and tougher to ignore. The Lakers might only be 3 deep, and I'm not sure you can win with the big 3 in the modern NBA, but, man, they are trying to prove me wrong every single night. How about, from the Lakers, we go to one of the biggest rivals of the Lakers in NBA history. How about the Celtics, all right? Are the vibes good enough for Boston to make up 3.5 games over the next few weeks and claim the first seed from the Pistons, who no longer have Cade Cunningham, at least for right now? What do you think?
Oh, yeah, the vibes are good. The vibes are really good in Boston. I'm not going to say they're elite. I am not going to say that they are immaculate, but they're really good for a couple of reasons. You're climbing up into the ranks in the East. We just saw Jason Tatum with a 24-point game. We just saw Jason Tatum drop 5 threes against the Warriors. Jason Tatum is starting to slowly but surely start to look like the 100% version of himself. He's starting to get out there a little bit more. He's starting to get acclimated even more. And you've seen enough. I've seen enough from Jason Tatum to say, yep, nope, he's good. Like, he'll be fine for the postseason. And look, I want to acknowledge that nobody ever roots for or cheers for injury. But the reality is the Detroit Pistons are much more vulnerable and much more gettable without Cade Cunningham. So that 3.5 game threshold between the Pistons and the Celtics feels much more menacing and feels like a much easier mountain to climb, considering the Pistons will in fact take a step back without Cade Cunningham. So if you're a Celtics fan, like, you're definitely piecing all of these little puzzle pieces together to how the Celtics can make a run in the postseason.
Yeah, look, I mean, the vibes within the Celtics organization have to be absolutely electric, because now they can step back and say, see, this is why we did it. For everybody that was asking, including us on this show, why are you bringing Tatum back? What's the point? This is why. This is why you have to keep your blinders on and just continue to try and be the best basketball team you can be every day. It's actually made me rethink some of the ways that I look at, late season injuries and what to do, because frankly, the Celtics have kept the blinders on. They were having a very good year. They didn't listen to any of the outside noise yet again about whether or not they should even bring Tatum back. They bring him back, He's working his way back into shape. They're going to be a great team, I think, in this postseason. And now, depending on how long Cade Cunningham is out and what he looks like when he gets back, it creates such an opportunity for the Celtics to just catapult forward. So now we're seeing the Pistons differently for reasons that make sense. We're also seeing the Celtics differently, and the entire East is stacking differently. It's clear right now, especially not knowing how long Cade will be out. It is clear as we sit right now to me that the Celtics are by far the favorites in the East. If they can't get to the 1 seed, I still trust them in the playoffs far more. So I think if you're the Celtics, the vibes are great. Now, Boston sports fans never have great vibes until they're actually hoisting trophies.
Never.
That's a group of fans that are never happy until the actual trophy is lifted. So the vibes are great for the Celtics. Celtics fans are in wait-and-see mode, as they always are. What about the Spurs? The Spurs clinched their first playoff berth since 2019 on a Wemby game-winning bucket with 1 second to go. Not shocking that they clinched the playoff berth, but the vibes in San Antonio are...
Look, they've got Wemby and nobody else does. That alone should make Spurs fans feel on top of the world. That alone gives you the good kind of vibes. Because not just in the regular season that we saw on full display against the Phoenix Suns the other night, but also if you want to kind of spin that forward to the postseason, it's the certified superstars in this league that step up in clutch moments in the biggest games that makes the biggest differences. And that's exactly what Wemby just did. That's exactly what Wemby, I believe, can and will continue to do as the Spurs go throughout the Western Conference in the postseason. And also, look, the Spurs have won, I'm just counting it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, have won 9 of their last 10. The vibes are good. The vibes are really good in San Antonio, considering that you have a supporting cast outside of Wemby to supplement him.
Yeah, look, the vibes are better than San Antonio rodeo dirt. For anyone that doesn't know, rodeo dirt is graded. The San Antonio rodeo has some of the best rodeo dirt in the world, all right? So that's a good thing to have rodeo dirt vibes. But also, there's a vibe to this entire organization that's even, determined, unimpressed. Because if there's anything we know about Wemby, it wasn't about clinching a playoff spot. Like, this is a guy that went into the All-Star game and cemented his legacy by telling everybody how much he cares. This is a guy that every time he accomplishes something tells us that how much more he wants. This is just the beginning. So while I look at it and say, man, the vibes have to be absolutely immaculate, the Spurs themselves are looking around saying, yeah, we expected this. We feel good about this. We're where we want to be, but we still have work to do. So the vibes within the organization, unimpressed because they are so determined. All right, so we're going to keep breaking all the vibes down. We'll get you all the vibes that you need. But coming up, the vibes are high in the WNBA. What does it all mean for the future of the league? Annie Costabile joins us next. We'll get her thoughts.
What do you think was kind of misunderstood about George Pickens prior to him arriving in Dallas?
I don't know. It was so many things that I feel like that was misunderstood. They feel like his attitude was off. And I mean, he come in the league at 19 years old. What do you expect out of a guy? You want him to be your receiver one?
Right.
I feel like that's kind of crazy. But keeping him within the guidelines, letting him be himself at the same time, I feel like was probably the best thing for him. And I knew that it was gonna have him comfortable here in Dallas.
You don't want to get ahead of yourself when you think that he's going to come and be a game changer. He's more of a managerial type that can operate at a high level. I've made the comparison to Jared Goff in terms of how he'll play the game within the right system. The best thing that has happened to Fernando Mendoza is Clint Kubiak bringing his system to the Las Vegas Raiders. And when surrounded by the right talent, he can have a lot of success.
We got the announcement that Floyd Mayweather will be taking on Manny Pacquiao in a rematch. People will watch, people will tune in, and I'm curious to see how it looks. Like, I think they're going to be around the same skill level if they both come in healthy. And I really think it is significant that Floyd Mayweather is putting the L on the line.
100%. How do you make the competitive balance the most even? I think Manny and Floyd at this stages in their life, that makes it fair and exciting. So I'm in on Mayweather Pacquiao too.
A little Saban for us because everybody loves Saban. So, give us your thoughts.
I knew that you were going to bring me in here and have me do Nick Saban for him.
Have you done Saban for Saban?
No, but I met him.
Okay.
And he didn't know that it was me. And he shook my hand, and I said, Coach, Joey Molinaro, so good to finally meet you, as if he would know who I was. And he just looked at me and goes, yeah, well, all right. Walked away.
I, for one, am really looking forward to reintroducing vegetables, 8 or more hours of sleep, and regular trips to the gym back into my everyday life. That from Annie Costabile after the WNBA finally reaches labor peace. Annie, walk me through it. What was it like? Because you guys were essentially camping outside to get every single detail. From a reporter standpoint, what was that entire experience like?
Not me being over dramatic about something online. But no, it was truly a surreal experience. I think when we all showed up on Tuesday, the first Tuesday, we weren't really sure what we were signing up for. I don't think any of us assumed that this was going to go 8 days. But looking back now, it's kind of funny that we had that assumption because both sides really were so far apart when they went into these marathon discussions that it honestly makes a ton of sense that it took 8 days of 12+ hour negotiating sessions to finally come to a verbal agreement. It was insane.
I just want to take a moment and acknowledge you, Annie, to acknowledge Alexa Philippou from ESPN, to acknowledge everyone who was out there with you, sneaking out outside in the elements, early hours of the morning, late hours of the evening. To people who say that journalism is dead, take a page out of their playbook because they did the hard work to get the scoop. So I know myself and WNBA fans everywhere appreciate you. When you were out there, yes. Round of applause, absolutely deserved. Round of applause and sleep and all of the good things absolutely deserved by you and the entire team. But when you were out there, when did you feel like things were starting to take a turn? Like things were starting to click and that we may actually get a CBA signed sooner rather than later?
I mean, honestly, there were different stages of understanding that something was going to get done. The first day, the fact that they met from 4 p.m. until 5:30 a.m. ultimately is around when both sides left the building. That to me was an indication, okay, they wouldn't be in this room for this long if they weren't making progress. And then by the end of the week, that's when publicly they started to use that word progress, because I think both sides, the reality of negotiations is that things can break down at any point. And so if you're the league or you're the union and you start talking about a deal getting done too soon, it can be misleading. And so they were very strategic in not using the word progress until maybe Friday, Saturday. And then by Monday, the tone, I will say with sources that I was communicating with kind of off scene, that's when things started to shift. And I started to get a sense like this is going to get done in possibly tonight, as in Monday. And then ultimately it went to Tuesday. And that's when the verbal agreement was reached, Tuesday into Wednesday, technically.
Was all of this worth it in the end? Did everybody get what they needed?
I mean, I just had a visceral reaction because it was certainly worth it. Like for me, I will say like I enjoyed it in the end. But as far as everyone getting what they needed, when talking about these two sides, I will say these 7-figure salaries should be celebrated. But ultimately, and I don't want to be too much of a cynic, I don't know that we'll be able to adequately answer that question for another couple months until we see how things shake out with teams, what these standards are that will be implemented across the league as far as these league-wide standards, that franchise to franchise standards that we know are going to be implemented. So yes, in the immediate, we can say this is historic, this is transformational, like they set out to do. They set out to reach a transformational CBA. But ultimately, to adequately summarize who won where, I got to see the full term sheet.
Let's also remember there's a lot that we still don't know. We're hearing
Right.
numbers reported, but not necessarily confirmed by the WNBA or the WNBPA. So take everything with a grain of salt. But we do know that what they were negotiating, the biggest part of it was revenue share. We know that roster sizes were part of it, housing, facility conditions, of all of those things. What was the most difficult, just from what you have heard and what you've seen, what was the most difficult for the Players Association and the league to find a middle ground on?
I think it was the rev share and just the salary component structure, right? Or the salary structure, because salary model, I think, is a better way to summarize it, because where the players were and where they wanted to go, huge divide. Okay. And that speaks to the growth over the last, however many years, but also the jumping off point. And so they had a lot of ground to make up. And so what I know and what I can confidently report is, again, these minimum salaries start at 270. I know it was reported that they will exceed 300,000, but that's with the rev share component or the rev share payout factored in. And that's the veteran minimums salary starts at 300,000. So that rookie minimum starts at 270, and that Supermax is $1.4 million. So I think how the salaries actually shake out in terms of the roster cap gymnastics that the GMs are going to have to do, that's what's going to be interesting, because again, the average salary based on a $7 million cap is one thing when you do it, just divide it by the 12 players that will be on the roster. But how it actually shakes out based on the GMs getting different caliber players on their teams, that's going to say a lot more to me.
So reports almost immediately came out of Vegas, A'ja Wilson going to get a Supermax deal. That surprises nobody. Who else stands out to you as the Supermax type players that we're going to see?
Oh, that's a great question. I think Kelsey Mitchell in Indiana. I think Napheesa Collier in Minnesota. I think, obviously Breanna Stewart warrants a Supermax contract. I think Kelsey Plum in LA. Nneka Ogwumike even in Seattle. So I think the deeper question there is, what players are actually going to be able to sign the Supermax? So obviously Las Vegas, that information getting out there is warranted. And Callie is a fantastic journalist. I was so happy to see her report that news as the Aces beat reporter. She does such a great job there. And A'ja hasn't been a Supermax player up until this point because she's signed team-friendly deals. And I say this all the time, but everyone compares her to Michael Jordan. And it's so true in so many ways, because Jordan even spoke about, like, sometimes you take sacrifices financially to win, which ends up paying off in the long run. And we've seen A'ja do that, but now is the time in her career where she deserves that Supermax salary. I mean, she has deserved it. But that being said, I think we are going to see players sign team-friendly deals, as they have done, in order to put together these championship caliber rosters. So who deserves it and who's actually going to sign it? Two very different kind of answers there, I think.
And there's going to be a lot of teams with multiple players that probably feel like they deserve a Supermax contract, or at least have the resume and the career acumen to deserve a Supermax. So the way that organizations to kind of decide to divvy up that money in a brand shiny new salary cap will be fascinating to see. But we did hear Kathy Engelbert say they expect the season to start on May 8th, but we have a lot to do before then. We've got a collegiate draft. We have an expansion draft for 2 new expansion teams. Pretty much everyone is a free agent. Do you feel confident that everything can get done in this shortened timeline?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think mentally behind the scenes, all the executives, whether it's coaches, GMs, they've all been preparing for this sprint into training camp. So yes, I think it's going to be tight, but they've been preparing to get it done in this fashion. So has the league. And so the biggest hurdle was obviously just coming to the agreement. Now, had they not come to this agreement, on Tuesday into Wednesday, I think then there would have been some cause for concern as far as training camp needing to be pushed back. What I started being told by various sources is that, again, had a deal not been reached early in the week, some of the preseason games were going to be in jeopardy. So yes, this wonderful schedule you have written out right here, very clear and concisely. This is what I've been told is the schedule that will be upheld.
Annie, you have done a great job reporting this. Front Office Sports has done a great job with it. You've just been incredible. So we thank you for all the value and effort in getting this done, getting this reported for us. Annie, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Follow her on Twitter, X at Annie Costabile. Appreciate Annie's insights on the WNBA. We'll continue to break that down, Caroline. I think it's going to be wild to see how much money gets spent and how many players are going to have to figure out what their new value is. That's the thing I keep going to. Like now it's a wild, wild west with values. Trying to figure out who gets valued at what is going to be really interesting to me over the course of the next month. Not so much in that I'm sitting here watching someone's money. That's not my job. But just to see how the league sort of patches that relationship with each player along the way. Some players might come in and think they're worth a certain number of dollars, and the team might be looking at it saying, well, we only have so much to spend. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
And to see how general managers approach cap gymnastics while also balancing an expansion draft. We don't know exactly what the expansion draft is going to look like because that was negotiated in this CBA. So how many players can individual teams protect in the expansion draft? Will that be a tool that GMs use to kind of massage some cap gymnastics a little bit? I'll use the New York Liberty, for example. Annie brought up Brianna Stewart. I think that Sabrina Ionescu is another player that could be one that's in contention for a Supermax contract. Can the New York Liberty pay two players the Supermax and also have enough money left over to pay some of their supplemental players? How does the New York Liberty approach an expansion draft when, let's say, maybe you can only protect 4 players? I don't know. I'm just guessing, just because we don't know exactly what that expansion draft is going to look like. So that's another thing that I think general managers are going to have to keep in mind is, who do we protect, knowing that the roster that we have currently assembled, we might not sign all of our free agents that we had from this past season. Remember, pretty much every single player who's not on a rookie deal is a free agent. We expect A'ja Wilson to go back to Vegas. We expect Brianna Stewart to go back to New York. There are some players that we're just waiting for the CBA to come through and then they'll sign their new deals. But not every single free agent is going to go back to their previous team. So let's look at the players that we have on a rookie contract, the players that we have under contract, our free agents, the money that we have available, understanding that all of our players are getting raises, and also who do we protect in an expansion draft? And also, oh yeah, by the way, there's also a collegiate draft, and we're doing that in the span of about 2 weeks.
And we also need to make sure that we get all the tickets sold and we get the arenas packed for all of these games. I do not envy WNBA team employees right now. This is one of those moments where everything's burning. It's fine. It's fine. All right. We'll continue to break down all the developments. Hopefully we'll get some of the information from it soon that we can get you guys caught up on. But coming up next, we'll get some thoughts from Scott Pianowski, fantasy baseball. That's right. It is that time. Scott's going to make us all brilliant. Coming up next.
A couple years ago, there was talk of John Jones and Francis Ngannou fighting. And John Jones said he wanted $10 million to fight Francis Ngannou. And Derek Lewis came out and said, $10 million, give me $1 million and I'll fight him.
They don't get it. They don't get it. And the managers think that they're doing a good job. The fighters think that they're doing a good job. And it's like, you guys are devaluing all of us. You guys are cutting out the legs from each other, crab in a barrel mentality. That's the mentality that has to change.
Is it time to remove conference affiliation and reward the top 16 teams?
100%. This is most a problem when the Western Conference is so much better as it has historically been. I like this. I would add another rule, which we've talked about before. I think the top seeds should be able to pick their opponent. That's the sort of thing that I think would juice up a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and I think would draw a lot more interest if that were to be the case.
Somehow, between the end of college football season, I don't know how this happens. Maybe it's just because there's so much NFL media. The NFL machine just sort of elevates these guys who who never really had that level of esteem or production in college. We all made fun of the Trubisky thing. And then no, by the way, no one in NFL media ever comes back and yeah, we duffed that one. Sorry. Yeah. No one ever says that. They just move on to the next guy.
What did you think about the Rams acquiring McDuffie and this price tag for him as well?
I laughed pretty hard when this came across. Like Les like he couldn't help himself. He got to go back to who he is at all times. There was no way he was going to keep just drafting players in the first and trying to figure this out. Especially with the way Sean talked after that game, like the NFC title game. He's immediately kind of shady towards the Seahawks. He was obviously upset. Like I would imagine this is about to be like a full-on assault offseason for the Rams to try and win another chip before Stafford gets out of there.
Here are the top 10 rankings for starting pitchers heading into this fantasy baseball season. Scooble and Skeens lead the way because, of course, they do some very intriguing names behind them. We're going to break it all down now with our very own Scott Pianowski. Scott, Yahoo Sports fantasy analyst. Scott, thanks for hanging out with us this morning, man. It's great. We're going to get this show's going to get super into fantasy baseball. Caroline is a much bigger baseball. She's a much bigger seam head than I ever am. So before we get into ranking all the players and draft strategy, what's the right approach to drafting a fantasy baseball team in terms of prioritizing pitching rotation or stacking your hitters?
Yeah, pitching is much more volatile than hitting. So your earlier picks, you want the reliable assets that's going to be hitters. You think about fantasy football, right? A lot of times we talk about the hero RB, where you have one running back you can hang your hat on. That applies in fantasy baseball too, where maybe one of your first 4-round picks is a pitcher you can hang your hat on. It could be Scooble in the first round. It could be somebody, maybe Logan Gilbert in the third round, Logan Webb, Hunter Brown would be maybe 3rd or 4th round picks. I like to have that one ace I can hang my hat on. But other than that, I'm going to pound the hitting early in any draft.
So I think it's always a great approach to think about the guys that you should draft. But sometimes even a better approach is, who should you stay away from? Who should you not draft? So I want to go back to some of the pitchers. Who are some guys that may be available at the top of some fantasy baseball drafts that are no-nos for you, that have some big-time red flags?
Yeah, there's one guy in the top 10 I'm not drafting at all, and it's Chris Sale. And as somebody who grew up in New England as a Red Sox fan, it hurts to say that, but he's 37 years old. He's only qualified for the ERA title, meaning hitting a certain innings pitch threshold, once in the past 6 years. I think the Braves are going to be closer to a 500 team than a playoff team this year. So a position I'd like to trend younger with, all right, you just less mileage, less wear and tear on the shoulder, less wear and tear on the elbow. So where Chris Sale is going right now, I'm not even seeing him on my sheet. He's somebody I'm going to want to be a lot younger at that starting pitcher position.
Who are some players that you'd say maybe on the hitting side are red flagged?
So I'm getting killed for this. I'm not taking Jose Ramirez in the first round. He is on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's one of the best players who's never won an MVP, and he fills all 5 categories. Why don't we love that? Third base is even a thin position this year. But when you're making those early picks, you're really investing in overall offenses and then sometimes even the ballpark. I don't love the setup behind Ramirez. So even though I see why he goes in the first round and I expect him to have a solid year, he's somebody I'm avoiding just because of the supporting cast. Now, a player I'm avoiding because of him is Pete Crow Armstrong. It's hard to reconcile what he did last year. He was a Hall of Fame MVP candidate for the first half of the season, and then he hit close to the Mendoza line in the second half. Some holes in his swing were exposed. He is a great defender, so he's not going to lose his job. He does have a power speed profile that we like, but I'm afraid he might hit 215. I'm also afraid he might get downshifted to the bottom third of a deep Chicago Cubs lineup. So Ramirez is more of a soft fade. I would strongly tell people not to draft PCA where he's going right now.
I think that's a good note and a good reminder for everyone as they're going through their MLB drafts. It's not just about the player that you're drafting in fantasy. It's all things considered of their usage, the kind of offense that they're going to be in. Fantasy drafting and drafting as a general manager are two very, very different things. But now that we have the negative stuff out of the way, I want to talk about the positive things. Who are some names that maybe we're not hearing a lot about, maybe some sleeper picks that people should keep an eye on maybe in some later rounds?
Yeah, I love the way you frame that too. We're drafting into an environment. Again, you think about fantasy football. You're drafting how good is your quarterback? How good is your offensive coordinator? How good is the team setup? And a lot of that applies in fantasy baseball. And that's why I'm targeting Mackenzie Gore. He goes around ADP pick 148 in Yahoo drafts, moves from Washington to the Rangers, better ballpark, better team around him. Follow the strikeouts. He's a first-round pedigree. I think things should really come together for him this year at a really nice price. outside the top 200, Andrew Vaughn. Again, we're betting on the organization. Milwaukee is what Tampa Bay used to be. They're smart. They spend their money better than everybody else. They traded for Vaughn, a former first-round pick last year from the White Sox. He was great the final third of the season. Again, the ADP outside the top 200 at first base. I think he'll hit 280 and probably hit 20-plus home runs. Alec Boehm last year, around pick 196 in Yahoo leagues, was hurt, didn't have a great season. He's healthy now. He's going to bat cleanup in a Philadelphia lineup. We really like Turner, Harper, Schwarber all in front of him. I think he drives in 100 runs, can hit 20 home runs. And the mediocre stats he had last year are all injury excused. He is a dynamite value around pick 196 in Yahoo.
All right, Scott. So give me some breakout rookies, somebody that you think could come out of nowhere and carry my fantasy team.
Yeah, we're always looking for the next big thing. And Connor Griffin, man, he is a big thing, and he's a talented kid. Last year, 21 home runs, 65 stolen bases, the number one prospect in baseball. Now, when is he going to play for the Pirates? He doesn't turn 20 until next month. I think they'll figure out something early, and we'll see him May at the latest. Maybe even he breaks camp with the team. Griffin is somebody, he's getting drafted aggressively, but I understand why. If you want somebody who's got almost as much pedigree, but a little bit more affordable, Kevin McGonigal in Detroit. We know it's Tariq Skubal's walk season. They're all in. They got to get their best team on the field. He's really good in spring training, a couple of home runs, a couple of stolen bases, and he's got more walks than strikeouts. So he's got the excellent batting eye that we always look for. McGonigal's somebody I'm targeting in Detroit. If you'd like somebody a little bit more proven, we saw 8 starts last year from Nolan McLean. He's a key member of that Mets rotation. I think they're a playoff team good enough to be on the USA team in the WBC. I could easily see 175 strikeouts from him. I don't think the Mets are going to limit him at all. I think he could easily be their number 1 or number 2 pitcher in a playoff series. So Nolan McLean is somebody I'd like to get in 2026.
I would just like to acknowledge something and give ourselves a pat on the back that we have now been chatting for close to 10 minutes and we have yet to say the name Shohei Ohtani. And that might be a record for a baseball segment for any sports show across America. But we do have to give Shohei Ohtani some love at some point. Of course, we do expect Shohei Ohtani to return back on the mound. So what kind of value does he have in fantasy, both as a hitter and also a pitcher?
Yeah, remember in Yahoo leagues, he will be split where Ohtani hitter and Ohtani pitcher would be viewed as 2 different players. And what's going to happen is if you draw that number 1 pick in your league, you're going to have a Judge versus Ohtani decision in your head. And if I had a number 1 pick 10 times, I might just split it. It's that close. Ohtani, of course, is going to steal more bases than Judge, but he does pitch. You worry about that being more wear and tear on him. I think there's a better lineup in Los Angeles. We saw 2 years ago, Ohtani decided to go all in on stolen bases. He backshifted on that a little bit last year. They're the number 1 and number 2 picks in every league. I probably lean a little bit more towards Judge, only because he doesn't have the wear and tear of pitching, but Shohei Ohtani at the peak of his powers, a true unicorn. There's nobody we can compare him to. Babe Ruth doesn't even apply at this point. I mean, Shohei Ohtani might be the best baseball player we ever see, and he's going to go 1 and 2 in every league. And again, what are we betting on? Environment, right? He has that deep Dodgers lineup behind him. The only other thing I worry about a little bit, because the Dodgers are already in the playoffs, essentially, anybody has a hiccup with a back injury, an elbow, a hamstring, they're going to back off guys because they're playing for October even when the season starts. Ohtani has been really durable for most of his career. The injuries he's have come on the pitching side, but I just worry a little bit that, and maybe that's more of a fade against some of the Dodger pitchers, right? Is Glasnow going to throw 120 innings? Blake Snell going to throw 100 innings, something like that. But keep that in mind. You can't go wrong with Judge or Ohtani again. They're going to go 1 and 2 in every league, and justifiably so.
I mean, Scott, a couple of years ago, I went to a dive bar with my buddy, a lifelong Dodgers fan, and I sat there. We watched the World Series. I became a Dodgers fan in that process. Never really had a favorite baseball team. All I know is World Series success. So you're telling me after 2 straight World Series that I can't just go into my draft and only draft Dodgers? Like, this was my secret weapon, is I was going to take everybody with the name Dodgers across the entire path. Is that not the right approach?
Well, the problem is, how do you get a good value on them? And I think maybe the guy to target on this team is Teoscar Hernandez. He's that boring value veteran. He's been around a long time. He's not going to go in the first few rounds. Probably drives in 100 runs, should hit close to 30 home runs. So it's hard to get a value on the Dodgers. I also think Kyle Tucker, the guy that they signed from the Cubs, MVP upside. He can run. He can hit for a high average, could maybe be a batting champion. We haven't seen his best season yet. He's had some injury concerns the last couple of years, but I like him in the first round. The 2 Dodgers I'm going to fade, because Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, they're future Hall of Famers too. But they're in their 30s. We saw the bat speed start to slow down for Betts last year. I wonder if playing shortstop has maybe caused some attrition in his game. And Freeman's just ever so slowly starting to become a good player as opposed to a great player. I realize he's had some wonderful moments in the playoffs and World Series the last couple of years. And again, I have him in the Hall of Fame already. I'd like my fantasy teams to skew a little bit younger. If you want a value on the Dodgers, Hernandez is your guy, and I'll sign off on Kyle Tucker in the first round.
You know, the way that Fitz is talking as a lifelong Dodgers fan of the last 2 years, all he knows is winning for his baseball team, is how I felt for a very long time as a lifelong St. Louis Cardinals fan. Don't feel that way after the past couple of years, but I have to have at least one St. Louis Cardinal on my fantasy baseball team. So if I'm going to pick one, who should it be?
Yeah, much love to the Cardinals. St. Louis, a famous baseball town. Wainwright and Molina were two of my staples for about 15 years, the most common pitcher-to-catcher combination. This year, it's probably a team that's looking maybe to be 500. J.J. Weatherholt could have been included in that rookie discussion I had earlier. I like things for him to pop. And then Alec Burleson at first base, he also qualifies at outfield in Yahoo leagues, will hit for a plus average. He's got enough loft in his swing to maybe hit 20 home runs, and still a little underserved in the Yahoo market. I think he's maybe 2 or 3 rounds mispriced. I'd put a circle around Burleson, and I'm open to Weatherholt as a late round pick.
So, Scott, one thing that I always find interesting about Major League Baseball is the beginning of the season, somebody comes out of nowhere, and then we're trying to figure out what's real, and everybody tells me I can't really test anything until 4th of July, right? Like it takes about that long. From a fantasy perspective, how do I approach the early portion of the season and patience when there's so much unknown and teams are still proving themselves?
Yeah, a lot of people will say don't even look at your fantasy standings until Memorial Day. But what I want you to be proactive with is the bottom maybe 10% of your roster. When you see guys emerge in April, be proactive with those final 3 or 4 roster spots. That's where you're going to do your turnover. Your early picks, you have to give patience to. The team you draft in March, you have to trust for a certain amount of time. It's just a matter of constantly rolling over, using the new information of the fresh season to maybe the bottom 3 or 4 guys on your bench. That's what I want you to do in April.
You know, Yahoo Fantasy is such a wonderful product. We're doing it for March Madness. Of course, we do it every single year for fantasy football. If there are some people listening and watching who are wanting to get involved in Yahoo Fantasy Baseball, but maybe are a little bit nervous, a little hesitant to do it, they've never done it before, what would be your pitch and your campaign for some new fantasy baseball managers to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, the app is outstanding. The setup of the league could not be more intuitive. And you can actually carry over fantasy football leagues and press a couple of buttons and you have a fantasy baseball league. And when we think of fantasy sports, they're great communities, right? It's a way to do something with your family, to do something with your neighborhood, to stay in touch with your college friends, or to do something fun at work. You know, just look at it as an extension of your community, right? We all want to be more connected, right? But it's what you're going to love when you go. I come back to the word intuitive, right? Is that everything is where you think it should be. Everything is where you guess it would be. I can't say enough. I have nothing to do with the game design, but they set up the game in a way that even if you haven't been on the applet at all, if you haven't had the app on your phone, if you haven't worked on desktop, in 5 minutes you're going to feel like I've been playing with this for 10 years. That's how good the design is.
Scott, give me some bold predictions. Got any bold predictions heading into the season?
Sure. So I'll give you kind of a softer bold prediction, and then things are more kind of out of left field. Juan Soto's already a great player. We saw him lead the majors in stolen bases last year, which is kind of out of nowhere. I think this year he might go 40-40, and the timing is right for an MVP. You got to pick him early. He's probably a top 4 or top 5 pick in every league, but I'm all in on Soto. You want something out of nowhere? Yuri Perez finally healthy in Miami, a team that's a little bit better than people realize, a plus pitcher's park, a good defense. I think he makes a Cy Young run in the National League. And I think Roman Anthony, another player we saw in the WBC, at the front of that Red Sox lineup, excellent power, excellent patience. I think he's a top 5 player in the American League, even in his young 20s.
You guys can follow him on Twitter, X at Scott_Pianowski. Scott, you do a great job with the Twitter in general, with all of the questions you get out there. You do a great job of football and baseball. Excited to play this year. So I'm going to be hitting you up constantly with questions. We appreciate your time and your expertise, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. The door is always open. And Fitz, once you start playing fantasy baseball, we'll have you for life. So welcome aboard.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be a fun season for us.
Can't wait.
Appreciate Scott's expertise. Can't wait. There we go. Going full Bart Scott here. All right, coming up. Also
Thank you,
can't
Scott.
wait for the Rory menu at the dinner for the Masters, but we've already figured out how to improve it. We'll tell you about it next.
Well, one of the things, too, that keeps coming up, I keep hearing, and it kept coming up in response to my story after the hearing and during the hearing, is, hey, why doesn't he just go pro? Imagine being a college kid and making $5 million plus.
It's pretty easy. It's just money, guys. It's guaranteed money. This is probably, for most of these individuals, the last time they can make this much money playing the sport.
How can I sit here in one breath and say the sport is broken when it looks like the audience is more pleased with the sport than ever?
It's not broke. It's just we've been drinking out of a fire hose for 3 years. But it can't just be pay them, kick them off the team, next guy, next team. I worry about these kids' long-term health and what they're going to do with their lives when they're 26 and 27, when they have no roots at any university.
James Rodriguez is reportedly joining Minnesota United. The main thing as a fan of the league, I would just be excited to see him play. And then Minnesota against NYCFC, get to go see James. And what if that game is at Citi Field, bro? Queens is going to lose their mind.
It's going to go nuts. Astoria and Jackson Heights will be empty. There will be 3 Uruguayans, 4 Argentinians, and 6 Mexicans in all of Jackson Heights going, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody?
Admittedly, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter as a prospect. Do you have any sense of what his growth is going to be like, where he might be playing more and more, what his role is going to look like, especially on the offensive side?
The way he is, his personality, I think this injury in rookie year is only going to just make him better. He was starting to really get going on offense, and we were starting to click. So who knows what the rep count looks like, but I know he's a special receiver when he gets the ball in his hands.
Oh, the menu is out for you for the Masters. For anyone that doesn't know, when you win the Masters the following year, you get to come in and you get to feed everybody. It's your job to come up with a themed menu that you think makes sense for everybody that's going to be there. Rory McIlroy's master menu has been revealed. You got some goat cheese stuffed dates, some Georgia peach ricotta flatbread with hot honey, some yellowfin carpaccio, some Wagyu filet, some salmon filet, Irish champs, Vidalia onion rings. They got everything out there, Caroline. So, obviously, first and foremost, what do we think? How do we grade? Is this is it Snackelroy or is it Wackelroy? What do you think?
Definitely Snackelroy. Apps, mwah, chef's kiss. Love the apps. You know, I love a tuna carpaccio. Cool with that. And salmon or filet, fine, good. Are we? We're not really thinking outside of the box there now, are we, Rory? But it's fine. The sides could use some upgrading. I mean, like, look, Brussels and carrots are great and all, but again, this is your master's menu. This is your opportunity to pick literally whatever you want, and the best that you could come up with was Brussels sprouts and carrots. And look, I love an onion ring. Feels a little out of place. Feels a little odd. Of all the sides in the world, we're doing onion rings. Okay, not my choice. Won't yuck your yum, but kind of strange. And then sticky toffee pudding is fine. It's fine. It's fine. I do not discriminate against desserts. I love a dessert. But sticky toffee pudding, of all of the desserts out there, I feel like we could have done better. It's not bad. It's like a B-.
Yeah, and I came in a little even lower. I came in C+ on it. And I think I came in C+ to your point. Like, I love sticky toffee pudding, by the way. It's a dessert that I absolutely love. I just feel like I could go to Hell's Kitchen in Vegas and get this same menu. Like, I feel like I could go to most steakhouses and get this menu. Like, there is nothing like tuna carpaccio and filet and sticky toffee pudding. And, you know, it's just like go up and down the list. None of it really felt like different. I don't know. It just feels to me like it's a really nice steakhouse and everybody's happy with it. You know, that's fine. I just feel like there's 100 steakhouses I've been to in New York where I could get this exact meal. And I don't know how I feel about that. The Masters seems to me like it should be a little bit more elevated. I want something that's a little bit different here. So with that in mind, let's we don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but we do want to yum even more yum And that's what we're going to do right now. We'll come up with some menus. Caroline, what do you got for us as the Caroline Fenton Masters menu? What do you got?
Yeah, so let me break it down for you here. Sushi's my favorite food in the world. So we're 1000% starting with a hamachi crudo, a nice light raw fish appetizer, kind of, gets it holds you over for a little bit, gets you started, gets you ready and in the mood for something yummy. And then our main course will be a rack of lamb with like a light olive oil, lemon, caper sauce. But we're not talking about any rack of lamb, okay? We're not just going to have anybody all willy-nilly making this rack of lamb. No, I want it from one specific restaurant in my hometown. I want it from Paul Mano's in St. Louis. Nobody else can do it. Nobody else makes it better. Nobody else makes it as good. Nobody else even touches it. So anybody in Augusta, I'm sure you're great and lovely and all, step aside. Paul Mano's is coming in and they're making their rack of lamb, of course, and a side of cream spinach because duh, everybody loves cream spinach. It's an elite side. For our dessert, it's a slice of chocolate cake. But it's not just any chocolate cake, right? It's a chocolate cake with layers of chocolate ganache in between it. This is not a warm chocolate cake. This is a chilled chocolate cake. Don't get that twisted. Warm chocolate cake is delicious. Cold chocolate cake is better. Argue with the wall because I'm not in the mood to do it. And it'll be served with a side of a chocolate squirrel, a delicious, indulgent, rich chocolate cocktail on the side to get everybody going and everybody in a goofy, silly party mood. Thoughts?
This is divine by you. By the way, all desserts are better cold, in my opinion. Again, argue with the wall. I don't care. Also, I wasn't aware of what a chocolate squirrel was. I just thought you meant like there was going to be a little chocolate, kind of like a chocolate, like at Easter we get the chocolate bunny. I thought you just had a squirrel-shaped chocolate. I was like, that's interesting.
No.
I didn't know that it's a drink. I like that better. I mean, the drink, you have me on this. I love this. You went perfect. Sushi also my favorite food. And I love the fact that you went from light to heavy. This is really well thought out by you. I'll be honest.
Thank you.
I was at the gym when I got the text that we were going to plan our menus. And as most people know that if you follow my content anywhere, I've been in a bit of a caloric cut. So let's just say I was starving at the gym. And so really, this is going to be the heaviest menu you've ever seen in your life. I'm reading it now, realizing you did a great job of progression. I did not. So my appetizer comes with a baked brie that we're going to bake in crescent rolls. So we're going to do a hand crescent roll around the brie. It gets baked in that. And then we're going to serve it with a flight of dipping opportunities. So you've got a fig jam, a hot honey sauce, and a berry compote. Those are all going to be, you're going to get the little versions of each of those with your baked brie. Now, it's important on the baked brie, by the way, you cannot underbake it. You cannot overbake it. Masters, I need you to make sure that when I cut into the brie, it oozes and it's bubbly, but I do not want any brie coming out of the crescent beforehand because that changes my ratios, and I do not want any clumps inside. This must be perfectly baked. And if we do this the right way, everybody gets their own individual. So you're not digging with everybody else. You are literally going to get a little crescent roll that you are eating, fork and knife, dipping it into the sauces. So when we get to the main course, prime rib, but the prime rib is served with a side of St. Elmo's horseradish that is then turned into a horseradish raw or a horseradish creamy. You have your both of your options on that. Medium rare is the only way that it's served, and it's served with a very, very thick pepper crust on the outside. So it's a black, white, and red pepper combined crust on the prime rib to get me there. For anyone that doesn't like beef, I've given you the option of a double thick pork chop that will be done in a mustard glaze. So that gives you an option if you're not into the regular prime rib portion of this. And then dessert, which again is obviously served cold. I'm a sucker for a great, massive lemon cake, like the type of like Del Fresco's in New York serves this lemon cake that every time I ever get it, they're like, hey, we'll bring you a box. And then the guy always looks offended when he realizes I've eaten the entire piece of lemon cake. So look, I'm in for a big, like we're talking thick, huge, multi-layered lemon cake. And then there are layers for each. Instead of like layers being thick, these are small, thin layers. And in between each layer is a layer of cream cheese frosting with the cream cheese frosting on the outside as well. And then to give it a little accoutrement on the side, we're going with the scoop of graham cracker ice cream on the side that gives you sort of the full graham cracker crust concept with your lemon cake. Thoughts, Caroline Fenton, on my menu?
Delicious. I can see why your mouth was watering at the gym because mine was just sitting here listening to you talk about it. Let me address the St. Elmo's horseradish for just a moment. Elite pull by you, by the way. Now, we were at 1933, like the St. Elmo's speakeasy concept this past weekend together in Indianapolis. The wonderful people of the Fishers Freight organization, the owner of Fishers Freight, Jared Woodman, the president of the IFL, were so generous and took us out this past weekend. I had my first experience with St. Elmo's horseradish. St. Elmo's cocktail sauce, it's legendary. It's famous in the shrimp cocktail. Everyone said, like, don't put a lot on the shrimp. Like, a little goes a long way. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Like, oh, nobody can handle spice these days. Like, okay, ninnies. Lesson learned. I never knew that you could taste something in your nose. Can't taste it in your mouth. Could taste it and feel it in my nose. And I was talking to somebody and I was like, I'm so sorry. I need a minute. Like, my eyes are watering. My sinuses are burning to the point where I'm like, is this healthy for the human body? I'm thinking, like, does somebody have to dial 911 at some point? So St. Elmo's horseradish, whenever we sit down for Fitz's master dinner, can't wait, by the way, it's going to be a blast. Just tread lightly with the horseradish. I learned the hard way.
I usually, when I go to a restaurant and order horseradish, I always get the creamy and the raw because the creamy's never spicy enough. So I want to add more raw horseradish into it. So that's why St. Elmo's gives it the extra kick. A producer, Doug, has said that the producers have voted Josh preferred Caroline's. I got the vote from Doug, and I got the vote from Goldfarb. So I win 2-1. I don't really know. I don't think this was a contest, though. I also think you went more bold as I read it. I mean, Lamb is very polarizing for some people, right? Like, you went with the polarizing, but you went with the finer meat. Like, to your credit, you went with something that I simply would not order in a normal spot. I loved how Masters yours was, and I do think that I missed by not having a crudo or a ceviche in the first round. Like, I went full indulgence from bite one.
You can never, miss anything or lose anything by including a raw fish. I miss it when you exclude a raw fish, but adding one in just levels everything up. But I do love a brie. You can never go wrong with a carb and a cheese. At any point in time of the day, of a meal, at any time, we love a carb and a cheese. Lamb is polarizing. I will say that. I do understand that, as is veal. But when it's good, you don't really care about it. I love the animals. I love our fuzzy friends. It's really easy to forget about any of the ethical issues involved in lamb and veal whenever you taste it, and it tastes really good. So by the two laws that I abide by, the law of cool and the law of it's because I like it, this abides by the law of it's because I like it, so deal with it.
100%. So Rory, Scotty, or the field? What do you got? Rory, Scotty, or the field? I think I take Rory or Scotty over the field.
I'm taking Rory or Scotty, and I'm always very hesitant to do that because odds are with the field, always, just by the the law of probability. But you give me that, man, albeit I know that Rory has a history of choking in the biggest moments, but Rory broke through, and it's Scotty's the best golfer on the planet right now. He's the person that's playing right now that is more reminiscent or has the career accolades most reminiscent of Tiger Woods, the greatest to ever play the game. So I take Rory and Scotty over the field, but I kind of hope that we get a new name, a new face. We get someone new into the Masters fraternity this year.
Yeah, I'm split on that. I think anytime you fall in love with the new personality, that's something that happens at the Masters in a way that it can't happen for any other event. So I love that, but I'm with you. Rory or Scotty or the field, the answer to me is Rory or Scotty, either of those. Scotty, I think particularly would be, just another cementing moment, right? Because inevitable, whether I like it or not, no matter how much you accomplish individually in golf, you're always living under the shadow, the cloud of some of the absolute icons that came before you. So for Scotty to break through and become one of those clouds eventually, more Masters is better for him. So I'm going to go eat now. We're going to go eat now. We'll be back Monday. Enjoy a wild day of the tournament. Come back and see us again on Monday, 9 a.m. Thanks for hanging out with us.